in today. This is the opening of the third show. I want to thank my brothers Shannon, my brother Smitty of Undivided. It's a movement. The third show, the premise of the third show is to talk to people to get honest opinions and to get that truth of what we're all looking for, especially in this day and age where truth is a short commodity. And we decided to get Nolan Sullivan on, who's a city councilman in Vacaville. And I've known him for, what, 3 years now?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, about 3 years now. He's one of my favorite. I'm glad I know him. He's one of those guys. He's just a good guy. And so the premise, so what we do with the third show is we ask 3 questions, 3 of them, very simple. And we give our guy the opportunity to state his opinion on those questions. And he was going to spot off on his own stuff. And I really do. The buckle in statement is really appropriate with dealing with Nolan. But so let's just go ahead and just kick it off with Shannon's first question.
Good afternoon. So Nolan, my question to you, and I know your hands are tied. I see the stress that you deal with, but when we talk about budget and city council, when we look at our school district here in Vacaville, is there a way that we can implement a fund for our school district? Seeing as that's part of, I know that both city council wants to be separated from the school district, but seeing as they're in our county, in our city, isn't there a way we could maybe like loosen the budget and put money aside for them that would help our city?
Sure. So do I have a time limit or just go?
Go.
No? Okay, cool. So I've actually done a stint on the school board as well. So I actually sat on the Vacaville Unified School District School Board for about 3 years. And I've run the nonprofit, the Vacaville Public Education Foundation, or VPEF, for the last, I don't know, 8 or 9 years or so. And so the long answer is most politicians will tell you no. And most politicians will say the city's the city and the school district's the school district, but that is false. General fund funding from the city can be spent on anything general fund in the city, whether that's childcare programs, mental health programs in schools, after school programs. There's plenty of good examples of cities out there that partner with their school districts and really try to leverage their resources as the 2 largest governing bodies in that city to do the best for their kids. The fact of the matter, to be totally frank, is that the relationship between at least the Vacaville Unified School District, I can't really speak for Travis, and the city of Vacaville is dysfunctional. It's broken. We don't work together. We don't meet. We don't collaborate. There's not a great relationship there. And you could find examples of cities where you have great relationships between both governing bodies, and they do their best to leverage their resources together. So the short answer is, I mean, could the city buy books or curriculum? That probably would be inappropriate. But can the city do things like partner with, so a great example in Vacaville could be, so the school district in the Vacaville Unified School District had to cut school busing about, I don't know, 10 years ago or so now. So the city coach does sort of kind of partner vicariously with the school district, but it's kind of by accident, right? There's no coordinated intentionality there. There's no effort. There's no making sure that working parents, especially in certain neighborhoods, have access to maybe different routes to really help those kids. We do kind of accidentally do that. But there's not intentionality there. There's not those issues there. I mean, another great example was, back in the day, we used to build a school and we built a park right next door to that. So that was always the plan. If you go through Vacaville neighborhoods, Browns Valley, there was always a park and a school right next door. And the thought process was, you've got a playground, you've got a big old field, let the kids use both those. It's the same taxpayers paying for the same resources. But if you go to any of those parks and schools now, you'll see a big fence put up between the park and the school. And it's the schools. The schools wanted to lock down their parks, which I don't necessarily blame them. They're having some vandalism problems and stuff after hours. But what you've then done is you've dramatically reduced the square footage that kids can kick around a ball, that they can play on a playground, they could use other resources. I mean, one of the craziest things I saw before I got on city council was I was actually sitting at Browns Valley Park. I watched a school district truck pull up, a nice big F-150, big old trailer, big old industrial mower, one of those ride-on mowers. They're probably $200,000. Guy gets off, he starts mowing the school district's property, right? like no joke, half hour, 45 minutes later, a city truck pulls up, another big brand new F-150, big old trailer, another $200,000 mower. And this guy starts mowing the park right next door to the school. So you have these two $200,000 mowers mowing the same damn patch of lawn. Imagine what you could do if that school district and that city said, hey, let's partner. Let's create an MOU and we'll share it and we'll each mower together. We'll buy one truck and we'll pay one guy. And let's put the rest of that money back to mental wellness in schools. Let's put the rest of that money back towards counselors for schools. Let's put that money back somewhere else. We just don't do that. And there's a lot of opportunities to do that all throughout Vacaville. I mean, there are some good examples, right? So the city of Vacaville, the police department, they do fund, I want to say, don't quote me on the exact amount, but it's at least 5 full-time counselors, mental health counselors on VUSD schools, which is fantastic. They also sponsor about 12 MSW interns. So that's a really good example of where you have a city really working with the school district and really doing their best to kind of partner with a school. This is the crazy part though, and this is the crazy part all in Solano County, because I know we're kind of representing all of Solano County. Out of 58 counties in the state of California, the average spending per student in the county, we are always in the bottom 8. So there's 50 other counties that spend more per student across the entire county. Vacaville Unified, I'm sorry, out of the whole state. Vacaville Unified, my wife's here correcting me. Vacaville Unified, out of 340 some odd unified school districts, so unified school districts when you have a high school district and you have an elementary district and they're combined, out of 340 or so in the entire state of California, we typically spend in the bottom 20th percentile. We're typically in the bottom 5th of spending per student. We spend less in Vacaville per student than the state average for the state of Kansas per student, than Louisiana per student in Vacaville Unified. And it's not a mismanagement issue. No one's like hiding the money or doing something crazy. The problem in Vacaville, it's got this weird anomaly of the way that school districts are funded. If you're a very impoverished community, you get what are called, it's all under the local control accountability formula, and you get add-ons. So for every child you have that's Title I or low income, free and reduced lunch, you get an add-on. For every child that's homeless, you get an add-on. For every child that's foster care, you get an add-on. For every child that's special ed, you get an add-on. For every child that's ESL, which is English Second Language Learners, you get an add-on. Vacaville doesn't have a very, I mean, even though it feels like it does sometimes, we have pretty light poverty when it comes to other places. So we don't get a bunch of those add-ons. The other problem is property taxes are the primary driver for school taxes. Property taxes drive school taxes. And I would challenge you to find a cheaper property market or a cheaper house in the state of California in most places than Vacaville. So we have really low property taxes, so that excess property tax doesn't get dumped back into the schools. So we have this double whammy of a super cheap property market, and we're not that impoverished or that special ed or that ESL, so we just don't have the funding per student we need. Get this, this is absolutely crazy. So Berkeley Unified School District, and this was 3 or 4 years ago, I haven't looked at the current stats, they had almost the exact same attendance as Vacaville Unified, so the exact same student count. But they actually had $100 million more per year. Vacaville School District's almost entire budget is almost $100 million. They had almost double the same budget. Reason being, A, the property taxes are much higher. The other sticky wicket though, is if you look at your tax bill for someone in Berkeley, you're gonna see school tax, school tax, school tax. People value education. They value supporting their kids. They value investing in their future. In Vacaville, we say we do. We say we're a family town, but we underfund our parks, we underfund our schools, we shoot down every tax that comes through. Davis, this will blow you away. So Davis, and this again was 4 or 5 years ago, had about 60% of the students that Vacaville Unified had, about 60%, 67 million more a year. And they had a much richer population. So they had much less unduplicated count. Again, they're citizens time and time again. And city council members were running these campaigns for the school district, pass tax after tax after tax to support kids. So there's a bunch of different ways a city councilman or a politician or someone from the city can support local school districts. Bottom line in Vacaville, we do not support our kids like we say we do. We talk it, wow. We talk the talk, but we don't walk the walk. And again, this is just Vacaville. If you unpeel the onion in Fairfield and Vallejo and Dixon, it's all the same story, man. But the bottom line is our kids in Vacaville get shortchanged all day long, and you don't hear a peep about it from the city. The other place that there's a problem, do you have questions? Sorry.
Hold on, because we do have 2 more questions.
Sorry, this is my jam.
I know, I know. but we wanted to be. I told y'all about. I told you. Did I tell y'all about him? So we're gonna move on to the next question from Smitty.
Beautiful people, what's happening? Welcome to our new show, and I want to first, before I do anything, pay respect to the Native American land that I'm currently on, and understand what they've been through, and how not just neglect that fact. Land we are sitting on right now as I'm sitting here back. So with that said, thank you, Mr. Sullivan, for being our very first guest. I know that's not easy to do. There's really no blueprint to follow or anything. So I really appreciate you being sort of a guinea pig.
Absolutely.
I was really appreciating your jam. Folks, this is information that you probably wouldn't be privy to if it wasn't for the work that Mr. Danley and Mr. Finley are doing to make sure like out to the folks. With that, my question would be, sir, real simple. How would an ordinary citizen, whether they was born in the city, whether they moved to the city when they was a child, whether they immigrated here from another country, what is the path to become a city councilman or part of the planning commission or part of the school board, a school board member, or anything that is open to a resident in that city? How does one take that path to be engaged and get involved?
Sure, that's a great question. And I think that's a question that many of us need to ask because there's not enough of us getting involved. I think the first thing, at least in Vacaville and throughout most of Solano County, is that there was a state mandate passed a couple years back called the California Voters' Rights Act. And the California Voters' Rights Act basically said that if your elected bodies don't match your constituent base, so if your demographics of your city are, let's say 40% Latino and 50% Caucasian and 10% whatever, and repeatedly time after time after time, Caucasians get elected to whatever those offices are, or it could be vice versa, it could be whatever the order is, then you can be sued for violating your citizens' civil rights, essentially, not representing the people adequately. And so there's an attorney out of Malibu who goes around the state suing districts and suing cities to change. And so, which I think is great. And so Vacaville got sued a couple years back. The school district got hit at the same time, as well as did many other Solano counties by this attorney. And we had to go to districts. And so what a district means is originally you got all of Vacaville, big old pie. You're running for the whole pie. And districts, you're running for slices. So the pie is sliced up into little districts that kind of represent certain pockets. That's usually based on census data. So rule number one is especially if you're in districts, you got to know your district, right? So if your district's not up, you can't run. You want to also know kind of the demographics of your district. I mean, are you running in a district where maybe the bulk of the voters match your political views? Are you running in a district where the bulk of the voters represent your popular views or represent your demographics or who you are? So I think it's important to know that the voters in that district have to elect you. It doesn't matter what people on the other side of town think. It matters what the voters in your district think. So you want to get a really good pulse there and make sure that, you know, you've got a good touch on that group. I think the second thing is getting involved. And so usually most politicians or school board members get involved because they're pissed off. So they got fired up about some certain issue. Usually something happened with their kid or something happened on their street or someone hurt their family and they got pissed off enough to run, which is a great reason to run. I wish more people would run, not because they were mad, but just to get involved. But usually that's what it is. So you want to get involved. I would say you should go to at least a dozen school board meetings or a dozen city council meetings first, learn the lay of the land, get to know a couple of the existing council members or school board members, ask them their opinion, ask them questions, ask them the hard questions about, you know, why don't you do this? Why aren't schools funded at this level? Why, you know, why do the police do this? Or whatever the questions are. And then really, I mean, basically you got to work your ass off. And so, you know, campaign season is full-time. So, you know, if you got a full-time job, you got a full-time job after your full-time job. And every waking minute you have, you should be knocking on doors, talking to your neighbors, telling them why you want to run and kind of making that work. I think getting alliances with different groups, whether that be bargaining groups or that be labor groups or that be Democratic Party or Republican Party or whatever is also helpful. But I think honestly, it's mostly just hard work and being committed to it. So sometimes you get lucky, you get a wide open seat and you walk right on. There's no, I mean, sometimes that happens too. So I think if you're routinely involved, it always helps to pay attention to the vacancies. And sometimes you just got a real nasty incumbent that you want to take out, and I guarantee you there's 25% of your district that wants to take them out too. How do you align all of their values with your values? A local campaign probably costs anywhere between $5,000 to $10,000. So you got to fundraise, and that's for signs, that's for Facebook ads, that's for filings. The most important part, I think, of a campaign, really, before a candidate who's super committed and into it and will do the work, is you have to have a solid team. So you really need a good treasurer. So you have to track all of your money coming in. You've got to track all the money you spend. You don't want someone to zing you on a paperwork issue. So you've got to have a really good treasurer to file all the paperwork. And it's a bit of a process, but it's not insurmountable. Anyone who could do their own taxes on TurboTax can file your campaign treasury reports. And then the second piece of that is, you got to have a team to support you, because it's hard work. And so, my number one fans were my mom and my wife. And we walked every damn weekend, man. We walked every time we could walk. We'd go out and hit doors. So I think then it's just strategy and timing, and that's really what it is. And I think the hidden secret for most local politicians is people think that we're super educated, or we're super involved, or we come from these political families, or we have all this inside knowledge. That's bullshit. We just had the guts to run, and we act like that because we don't want other people to run against us. So again, I think it's getting organized, it's getting pissed off enough to run, but it's knowing the numbers in your district. So looking at those district numbers, and that's how you do it, And so it also helps to be involved in like nonprofits or groups like this, or things to kind of get your name out there and get your rep out there first. So I would always advise, if someone wants to do it, maybe at least 2 years ahead of time, get involved. Do the Boys and Girls Club, Big Brother, Big Sisters, the chamber, certain things to get involved and get your name out there. But really that's it, and for me, I grew up here. I was born here. My kids are 5th generation, although it's on my wife's side. I just love Vacaville, man. And I started paying attention one day, and I just realized, like, this place does not represent my values, and it doesn't represent the values of my neighbors or my friends or the people that I know. And I started asking why. And it's because in a town with the majority of Democratic voters, we had an all Republican city council. We had an all Republican school board. And people will say that partisanship doesn't matter. And in some cases it doesn't. But I will tell you, when it comes to certain things like school funding or vouchers or police issues, your party certainly matters. And it totally dictates the way you vote. And if you would have asked me that 2 years ago, I would have said, no way. But being in this for 2 years, your party totally matters based on kind of those key issues. Potholes and parks and barking dogs, it doesn't matter. But certain things, it does matter. So that's where I would start.
There you go. Well, so for the final question, and I kicked it around earlier with the brothers just to try to figure out, because their questions I loved. Mine was like very simple, but as always, Smitty is the encourager. He truly is. And my question is this: what is the future of Vacaville?
That's a great question, man. And I think this year will really dictate that path for the next 20 years or so. I think, like I said, I don't necessarily mean Republican or Democrat. I mean, to some extent I do, but I also mean conservative or kind of progressive values, right? And so Vacaville has been built upon a very conservative base. And we've had very conservative leadership here with very conservative values. If you look at the data, though, that's not Vacaville. Vacaville, the majority of Vacaville voters are Democrats. They're liberal, they're progressive. We're not super progressive. We were one of only 2 counties in California that didn't vote for Bernie over Biden, which burned my ass. I was pissed off about that. But, we're not a super liberal county either, but we are not super conservative, and so in other places in the county, they're majority red, they're majority conservative. I think if Vacaville wakes up this election season and realizes they have a slate of candidates that represent them, and that voting for someone because they were your friend in high school or they were your buddy and you'll have a beer with them, not the issues they actually represent, and they actually get out and they start voting for the right candidates, I think Vacaville is set on a path for what I call purple. Right now we're red, we need to be purple. And I think there's nothing wrong with having some conservative viewpoints on the council, but it's got to represent the population. It's got to represent the constituent base. And the fact of the matter is Vacaville is a purple town. We're a middle of the road town. We're not far left, we're not far right, we're somewhere in the middle. But right now we're a deep shade of maroon. And I think that this year, if the voters wake up, we'll be a solid purple. And I think we'll see some balance. We'll see some new candidates that represent some new values, some new neighborhoods, some new demographics possibly. I think maybe we'll finally address this school funding issue if we get some school board candidates that really get in there and want to shake things up and ask serious questions. That's my hope and my heart, my optimism speaking. What also might happen is if we might crash and burn. Back from a very maroon situation to a deep red situation. Because in every district where you've got someone who is progressive and maybe represents the values that you're talking about, you have a very conservative candidate running too. And they want Vacaville to be a very different place. And, quite frankly, I don't agree with that. I think Vacaville should be a place for everyone. It shouldn't be a place for one group. And I think right now Vacaville is a place for one group. But I think this season, man, watching some of these kids out there protesting, watching some of the stuff on Facebook, watching Miss Vacaville take people on social media and just laying it down, I think that we have a real shot this year to change the course of Vacaville for the next 10, 15, 20 years, and hopefully also infect the rest of Solano County and flip some seats in Solano. This should be a purple place where everyone feels welcome, and it's not. And I think that at some point in time, voters have to connect the dots between why are my schools not funded? Why don't I have a new park? Why do we have these issues with law enforcement or public safety? Why do we have these mental health issues? Why don't we address homelessness? And they're going to connect the dots to, it's because these elected officials that have been in office for years and years and years don't want to do that. And I'm not saying we need to go full Berkeley or full Davis. We just need to pick a little bit right
just
here.
Just a little
right?
bit, yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
That's all I'm asking for. I'm not asking for crazy progressive change. We just need a little bit right here. And I think that Vacaville will be a much better place. So I'm hopeful that happens. I'm hopeful voters wake up and connect the dots. And hopefully that's where we end up, So that's how I would answer that question.
Right on. All right. So here's the challenging part for you, Councilman Sullivan. You got 2 minutes. 2 minutes to just express whatever you need to express right now.
Your questions were on point, man. You actually kind of hit the point.
I would like to interject really quick.
Okay, yeah.
I apologize. I'm losing format, but I think it's important.
No worries.
Third show, I think it's 3 minutes. Makes sense. Perfect. Instead of 2 minutes, all the third show. Let's go 3 minutes.
Oh, so you want to do the whole number tie-in thing? You want to have it all connected?
All right.
You would come up with something like that. Whatever.
All right. I got myself.
But hold on. But see, this is the thing. You're giving this man 3 minutes. You can't talk without you on mute. Come on. Okay.
3 minutes is what it is. We good? Shannon, you good with that with a nod? Thank you. There we go. 3 minutes.
Fine. You got 3 minutes.
All right. So the questions were actually pretty spot on to what I wanted to talk about anyways. I think really what I want to express to folks that are watching the show tonight is that we need to build a bench. We need to build a team. We need to build a farm team. We need to build a community where we're inspiring leaders that are coming up. We're inspiring leaders that could be tomorrow, and we're connecting them to the leaders of today. And that we're building a system in Solano County where there's always someone else coming on board. And when you have a situation where you've got multiple candidates that are running for the same seat, that share the same values, we as a community say, look, we're going to talk with you and figure out which is the best candidate to run forward for the needs of the community and not split the vote. We need to be smart about it. And I think different groups in Solano County have been doing this for years and years and years. And that's why we're in the situation that we're in. And I think, quite frankly, we have to unite. And whether it is, issues with pride issues with police, issues with all kinds of different things, the one thing that is the common thread in all of that is that we have not had a shared voice, and that separately, we don't have the power to take on kind of the system as it is. Together we do. And so I think, again, and Troy, you're pretty excellent at this, is we need to be speaking to those next generation leaders. We need to be speaking to those next generation of folks, the people that want to run for school board, the people that want to run for city council. And we need to educate them and help them run a campaign, mentor them, coach them. And honestly, we'll keep building it up. Maybe the folks that are in seats today, maybe they go up to state assembly, or maybe they go up to state senate, and so we have this deck of people that represent our value system, maybe not exactly, but closely, or at least they'll be open-minded enough to have a dialogue and a conversation and listen to you. I think part of the issue that I've seen in Solano County today is you'll go to a board meeting, a council meeting, a school board meeting, you bring up your issue and their ears are off. They're not even listening. You're telling them whatever your issue is, and they could care less. They want you to get through your 3 minutes and get the hell out of there. You're wasting their time. We at least need leaders who are going to give you your day in the sun, take everyone's issues seriously, and actually have a meaningful conversation. And I think there's conservative candidates that can do that too. But I've witnessed personally, people's personal agendas right now are driving what they're doing in a lot of these positions. And it's not about your personal agenda. Your job as a council member, a board member, or a supervisor is to get consensus from your district, and you bring that voice forward, and you're an open listening person who tries to kind of modulate that voice for your community. And so, again, I've watched different groups organize and kind of take over and hold fort. And we got to do the same thing on both sides. We got to do the same thing with all these conversations. I think the thing that is the biggest head scratcher for me is, how do I connect that message to the protester down in front of City Hall? How do I go down there and talk to some 19-year-old who's pissed off and wants to burn the system down and thinks that every politician's a liar? Because, you know, and I get that, and I'm okay with that. How do I tell them, hey, your protest, even though it's valuable and I feel your pain, I understand why you're out here, it doesn't matter out here in front of City Hall. It matters in those City Hall chambers. And a lot of the issues that you're pissed off about, if you flip 2 of those seats, you would have an audience in that council chamber, an audience in that school board chamber, an audience in that board of supervisors chamber, where they would actually listen to you. So I think the $1 million question is, how do gentlemen like us talk to those folks that are pissed, that want to change, that are just so disenfranchised with the system and so tired of the same old bullshit and people telling them to vote? How do we convince them that actually is the path forward and show them how to make a smart vote? And that's what I'm focused on right now. And I don't have any answers, but if you guys want to help me with that or have any thoughts, I'd love your help. I think that's my 3 minutes.
There you go. There you go. There you go. Right on.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I knew you was gonna be long-winded. It's always shaky with you.
I know. I can go.
But I want to thank everybody for tuning. I want to thank my brother Shannon, my brother Smitty, Nolan, as always. You know, it's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure. And people, it's the 3rd show. This is what you get. You get honesty, you get truth, and you get that information that we feel that you need. We want to thank you all, you know, for tuning in today, and catch us every other Monday. Every other Monday at 7 o'clock. Thank you. Appreciate you. Everybody, good night.
Thanks, guys.